Welcome to the deep dive. Imagine a future where AI isn't just stuck in big tech labs, but it's out there on a decentralized network, working together, almost like a global brain emerging.
Yeah, it's a really exciting idea.
Wow.
And that's pretty much the vision behind the Bittensor Network.
Right. Can you give us the quick rundown on Bittensor itself?
Sure. So think of it as a peer-to-peer marketplace, but for machine intelligence. The main goal is, well, to democratize AI. Let anyone contribute models or compute power and get rewarded for it.
With their token, TAO, right?
Exactly. You have participants acting sort of like miners doing the AI work, and others, validators, who check the quality of that work.
Okay, and it's not just one big marketplace. You mentioned subnets before we started.
Right. Subnets are key.
Yeah.
Within the big Bittensor network, you have these specialized mini marketplaces. Each subnet focuses on a specific AI job, like image generation or data analysis.
So they compete within their niche.
Precisely. It drives innovation for that specific task. And the network has ways to figure out which subnets are actually valuable.
How does that work? Is it just the validators?
Validators are part of it, assessing quality within the subnet. But there's also dynamic TAO. TAA holders can stake their tokens to the subnets they think are promising, sometimes getting subnet-specific alpha tokens back.
Ah, so staking signals value.
Yeah, it's like the community voting with their TAO. More stake means the network directs more TAO emissions to that subnet. It's a market mechanism, really.
Got it. Okay, so for this deep dive, you've brought us sources focusing on one specific subnet, subnet 108, and the name. It's pretty ambitious.
It really is. Internet of Intelligence.
Yeah, that just screams potential, doesn't it? What could they possibly mean by that?
It signals a huge ambition.
Yeah.
Definitely aiming high within Bittensor.
But that's not all the sources cover.
Mm.
There's this wrinkle, right? A mystery element involving a web ID.
That's right. Your query identified someone with the ID Dingoman as a core team member for Subnet 108.
Mm.
But when the sources looked into the public digital footprint for that name,
It didn't quite match the profile you'd expect for someone building, advanced AI infrastructure.
exactly. The public activity linked to Dingoman seems, well, quite different, which raises questions.
Okay, so that sets our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack these sources for you. We'll explore what this Internet of Intelligence concept might entail within Bittensor. We'll look at the digital footprint the sources found for Desdingamen.
And see what connections, or maybe lack of connections and unanswered questions, pop up from the material you provided.
Yeah, basically extracting the key info so you get a clear picture of this fascinating, if slightly enigmatic, part of the Bittensor world.
Sounds good. Maybe we should quickly recap Bittensor's foundation first, just to ground us.
Good idea. So, core purpose. Decentralized AI marketplace, this neural internet idea, trying to break AI free from central control, rewarding people with TAO.
And subnets are the building blocks. Specialized, independent marketplaces. Developers create them, define the tasks, set the incentives. Miners do the work. Validators evaluate it.
And that evaluation feeds into Yuma Consensus.
Right. That's the algorithm Bittensor uses to figure out who gets the TAO emissions, rewarding the best work on the most valued subnets.
And value is signaled by TAO staking, which influences those emissions via dynamic TAO. You mentioned alpha tokens, too.
Yeah, often when you stake TAO to a subnet, you receive its specific alpha token. It's part of the incentive design for many subnets. And there's also Subnet 0, the root subnet, for staking that supports the whole network, not just one task.
Okay, so this whole structure allows for a huge variety of AI functions competing and growing, which brings us back to Subnet 108, Internet of Intelligence. What concepts does that name pull from?
Well, the sources draw some interesting parallels. First, the obvious one is the Internet of Things, IoT. Networks of physical gadgets, sensors, all connected and swapping data.
Enabled by things like cheap sensors, constant connectivity, the cloud.
Exactly.
Right.
And then there's the next step, AIoT, artificial intelligence of things. That's putting AI onto those IoT devices.
So the devices aren't just dumb sensors. They can actually process data locally at the edge.
Right, for smarter decisions, better efficiency. The sources even mention older studies, like one from KPMG, envisioning a future where things have their own AI and cooperate, like swarm intelligence.
Wow. Okay. And there's academic work on this, too.
Yeah, the sources point to a 2019 paper talking about collective intelligence emerging from connected humans and machines in the 6G era, AI augmenting us.
And a newer one, 2024.
That one looks at semi-federated learning specifically for an Internet of Intelligence. How do you train models together when they're on all sorts of different devices, like in self-driving cars or smart cities? It's a big challenge.
Okay, pulling that all together. Internet of Intelligence for Subnet 108 sounds like they want to build a network where intelligence itself is the thing being connected, shared, maybe even combined.
That seems to be the implication, not just providing AI services, but creating an interconnected web of intelligence, very aligned with Bittensor's grand Internet of AI vision.
So based on all that background, what might Subnet 108 actually be trying to build? The sources speculate, right?
They do. Based on the name and these concepts, potential focus areas could include things like swarm intelligence or multi-agent systems.
Meaning incentivizing lots of different AI agents to find each other and work together on problems, like that KPMG idea.
Potentially, yeah. Developing the rules for how they interact. Or another angle could be federated learning, but at a really massive scale.
Building the infrastructure so models can learn from distributed data without ever needing to centralize that data, like for privacy.
Exactly. Tie into those academic ideas like semi-federated learning, maybe using specific algorithms designed for diverse devices.
What else?
Maybe a marketplace for composable AI services, like AI Lego bricks, where you can trade, combine, and dynamically build new AI functions from existing ones. Intelligence is a commodity.
That sounds powerful.
Could be. Or maybe decentralized knowledge graphs, building shared knowledge bases that AIs across the network can use and contribute to.
Or even tools for managing really complex AI workflows, advanced AI orchestration.
Right. Coordinating lots of different models, maybe even across different subnets. The point is, any of these is a massive undertaking.
Yeah, the tech challenge sounds immense, especially designing the incentives to reward complex collaboration, not just simple tasks.
Absolutely. It requires some seriously sophisticated thinking about mechanism design.
Okay, so that's the grand vision. Now let's shift to the other part of the story from the sources. This Dazdingban ID identified in your query as a core team member.
Right. The sources analyzed the public digital trail for this ID.
And the main finding was gaming.
Predominantly, yes. Deep involvement in online gaming communities, particularly around Diablo 2.
The sources were specific, mentioning activity on Diablo2.io.
Yeah, a profile under Dazdingoman, joined a few years back, last active a couple of years ago, even mentioned a Battle.net ID, Dazdingoman hashtag 2326.
And details about trading. Forum posts.
Lots of details.
Right.
17 sales, 9 purchases, a trust level of 13 on the site. Forum posts about testing weapon damage for barbarians, game updates, interest in a database mod for the game menu, asking for advice on character builds.
Even a specific trade mentioned a token of absolution for a Malrune.
Right. The sources emphasize this shows really deep engagement, understanding game mechanics, the in-game economy, community interaction, technical aspects like mods, not just casual play.
And there was other gaming activity mentioned.
Presence on arepublic.com, another strategy game listed under Germany, and an old forum post from 2010 selling a Razer Naga gaming mouse. So long history of interest in gaming and related hardware.
So based only on that public trail, what skills did the sources infer?
Analytical thinking, definitely, from testing mechanics and looking at mods, understanding digital economies clearly from the trading, community participation, and some technical aptitude, at least within that gaming context, mods, data, etc.
Okay, here's the big question the sources raise. How does that profile connect to being a core team member for something as technically demanding as an Internet of Intelligence subnet on Bittensor?
That's the core tension.
Huh.
The sources point out the apparent disconnect. This public persona looks like a dedicated gamer, maybe a power user or enthusiast, not necessarily the public face you'd associate with, say, a lead AI researcher or blockchain architect for such a project.
Especially given the query identified them as core team.
Right. Now, the sources do speculate on possible transferable skills. Could understanding game economies help design subnet incentives? Maybe.
Yeah.
Could analytical skills from gaming apply to system design? Perhaps.
Is community experience useful? Does interest in data mods show comfort with data?
Those are the kinds of speculative links the sources mention. But, and this is crucial, they conclude that this public footprint doesn't directly show the kind of core AI or blockchain development expertise you'd expect.
So the person's role might be non-technical, or they work under a different name for technical stuff.
That's the suggestion. Or perhaps their technical work just isn't public under that ID. And critically, the sources stress that the claim Dazdingoman is a core team member came from the initial query and isn't verified by the public footprint analysis they did. That link remains unconfirmed by the sources themselves.
Wow. Okay, so we have this huge, exciting concept for Subnet 108, and then this investigation into a linked ID that leads somewhere unexpected, with the link itself being unverified by the sources.
Which leads us right into the current status and challenges for Subnet 108. according to the sources.
And the main takeaway there seems to be a lack of information.
Pretty much.
Huh.
Despite the buzzworthy name, the sources find very little specific public documentation. Standard Bittensor files on GitHub lack details for 108.
Even dedicated documentation repos.
Yeah, like TensorPlex Lab subnet docs, there's a placeholder or structure for 108, but no actual subnet.json file or description like you see for other documented subnets, like subnet 40, chunking.
So what are the big hurdles the sources identify for subnet 108 right now?
Number one is that lack of public info. What are they building? How? What are the incentives? What's the roadmap? Who is the team?
Then the sheer technical difficulty of actually building an Internet of Intelligence. We talked about that consensus for agents, interoperability, valuing collaboration. It's huge.
Absolutely. And tied to that is the uncertainty around the team's specific expertise, including this whole unverified Dazdingoman situation.
And finally, just the basic challenge any new subnet faces, getting adoption, building network effects within Bittensor.
Right. So for anyone wanting to follow this, the sources suggest ways to monitor.
Like keeping an eye on the official Bittensor Discord and Telegram.
Definitely. That's often where news breaks first. Also, watching key GitHub repos, especially that TensorPlex Lab subnet docs, for any updates on subnet 108.
And maybe the main Bittensor repo, too.
Yeah, for related code changes. And of course, just watching the subnet explorers online, checking if subnet 108 registers, gets stake, shows emissions, updates its metadata.
And figuring out the team situation, like the Dazdingoman connection, probably requires waiting for official announcements or maybe careful community engagement.
Exactly. It really underscores how development happens in this decentralized, often pseudonymous space.
So let's wrap this up. We've journeyed from Bittensor's overall vision through the ambitious concept of Subnet 108's Internet of Intelligence, drawing on ideas like AIoT and swarm intelligence.
And then we dove into that intriguing digital footprint of Dazdingoman, finding this dedicated gaming persona, contrasting sharply with the AI project, and noting the sources couldn't verify the team link.
We learned that Subnet 108, despite the name, is currently quite opaque, lacking public docs and facing massive technical hurdles.
Yeah, the core tension the sources reveal is this gap. A really powerful high-aspiration concept perfectly aligned with Bittensor's mission versus the current reality of it being mostly an enigma with big challenges.
It leaves us with a final thought, something for you to chew on. This whole situation with Subnet 108, the grand name, the sparse details, the unusual digital footprint investigation, what does it tell us about tracking real innovation in these decentralized, sometimes pseudonymous crypto spaces? How do you separate the signal from the noise? And maybe, just maybe, could skills honed in unexpected places like complex game economies or online communities actually end up being surprisingly valuable for building the future of decentralized AI? The path from just a name to a working Internet of Intelligence is definitely one to watch.
A lot to think about, for sure.
Thank you for bringing us these sources for this deep dive.